What I loved about his approach was he cared so much about the product, whereas the other folks that I met always cared about sales. And it's like sales to me, if you have the right product, that's not a problem. Right? We'll figure out the sales if we have the right product. Otherwise, I'm just convincing people to do something short term that's really not that important.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, hanging out with Kris Snyder. A really cool relationship that we've built, actually relatively recently.
Right.
But always kind of funny when we introduce ourselves because, like, this is not my brother, this is not my father, this is the other Kris Snyder with a K and a Y. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Scott, thank you. So you guys had a great partner event this last week. I don't know how many total partners did you have in?
23 organizations, 28 partners.
Right. So it was awesome. And so we're at your headquarters. You guys gave us lanyards. I'm walking around there introducing myself. And every time I said, "Hi, I'm Kris Snyder," they would laugh. And they're like, no, and I'm like, actually, I am. I'm just not that one.
That is just so wild. And honestly, what is, I think, even smaller world, because Kris is also here from Ohio, lives right here in Cleveland with us. My dad, I think, back in his consulting days, had called on MCPC while you were there. Yeah. So I think you guys had met maybe even prior to our EPI days.
100%. Yeah, there was. I don't remember exactly because it gets a little hazy back.
Yeah,
all the
way
back.
Or
20 years back or something.
Yeah, man.
But it was we were trying. I think it was post his Brulant days.
Man, what a wild ride, right? Brulant, then he was at Exteric, right? And that's when he came back in to start Aspire Management. But yeah, wild ride, right?
It's a small community. It really feels large at times. But Cleveland still, it's hard to not overlap more often.
Yeah. So many of you know Kris and perhaps know 90 from the EPI community. But in getting to know Kris, I wanted to have him on the show because this particular season that we're in of the show is I'm trying to interview more business owners and people that have grown and exited companies and different types. And so, though many perhaps know you in our community today with 90, I want to go all the way back to the Vox Mobile days. And I think a really cool business that you kind of started and grew through a recession. And I just think we don't talk enough about like the venture capital game. So let's go all the way back to the founding of that business. Can you tell me what that was like? Yeah. What year was that?
Well, we created Vox in 2006, but I can't tell that story without telling the MCPC story.
Okay.
So for those who may or may not know some of the origin of MCPC, but it was a carve-out of a publicly traded company called MCSI out of Dayton, Ohio. So MCSI had rolled up 16 computer product companies across the country. They were publicly traded. They hit some financial challenges, and so they spun off these 16 groups, which they had never actually pulled together. They were just on the balance sheet as one company, but it was 16. And so the largest one in that 16 was Dreher Products out of Strongsville, Ohio. So that's what we anchored MCPC to. I came in just as that spinoff was happening. A good friend of mine took the president's role there. And so I was living in Chicago with my wife, and we were trying to decide, like, what do we do when we get married with the kids? And Cleveland just became our, like, let's split the difference. I grew up in the Columbus area. She grew up in Detroit. That was our split the difference moment. So what MCPC was, though, when we spun it out, was really, as the name would denote, kind of computer products. So toners, printers, PC management, right? For a lot of the large folks you would imagine here in Cleveland, like your Parker Hannafins and even your Temkins. And so, but we were birthing new businesses inside it. Like, so we were trying to get more into the services element. And one of those businesses I started working on, mostly because BlackBerry showed up on the scene really hard in kind of that 2002 to 2005 timeframe, especially. And so we started to figure out that we could actually build a managed mobile technology business. But we got to the point we were building inside MCPC, and it just became apparent it needed to be its own thing. Yeah. And so that was the moment. I was the COO, CTO of the overall business. And I really had just got to the point where I wanted my entrepreneurial, itch to get scratched again.
Yeah.
And so I talked to Mike Treblecock, who was the primary owner. We cut a deal. I bought the rest of the assets. It was about 15 employees inside MCPC, and we rolled it out.
So it was a rolled out division that then became its own
Yep.
entity and business.
Yeah, and my job as the COO was to build these businesses. So we actually MCPC's had a couple more exits of other businesses since then, and some of those were ones that we actually had started when I was there between 2002 and 2006. So yes, we had 15 employees when we got started, and we had to go right into fundraising because we didn't have enough revenue outside of MCPC to support all those folks because they were now duly
very interesting.
Yeah, dedicated to it. And there's so many great stories, by the way, in my opinion, especially in Ohio, where you can build businesses inside adjacent to another business.
Yeah.
And because the hardest part about starting a business is the cold start. Where do my first customers come from?
Exactly.
Right? But if I build it adjacent or inside of another business and I carve it out, spin it off, then really you don't have that cold start moment. Right.
No, right now.
I have credibility. Really. I have momentum. I probably still have a good partner in the previous company that spun off from it. Right.
Yeah, sure.
And away you go. And we've done that a couple times here locally, just working with other entrepreneurs to kind of carve out some businesses, get them into the marketplace, fund those businesses, and get them to grow.
Would there be anything that you would have done differently? So I think that's a unique model to roll it out. But do you remember that time in 2006 where you took that division? What did you learn back then?
Well, I learned we weren't ready for it.
Really? Okay.
well, because and probably most of the stories of people sit in the seat. If they knew then what they know now, they probably would have done some things differently. And I didn't have enough. We had a really full, robust pipeline. I was believing in the pipeline was going to hit and it just never happens as fast as you want it to happen. And then all of a sudden you've got burn that's happening inside the business, and you got to go raise money while you're still in that earlier stage and get people to buy in and believe that the business is going to turn to a place that's really not just an investable asset, it's a saleable asset, right?
Exactly.
They're going to want their money back, and that's going to be a fair moment.
So why Vox? So I did this deep research. I go down rabbit holes with my guests, and you're a big runner. Is this where Vox comes from? Where you hit your Vox? Tell that story.
Yeah. So before there was a Vox Mobile, we had a Vox running club. And the way in which that happened was I had a good friend. We would go run together, and we were talking about the sweet spot of your run, right? When you find the flow moment where you it's not the pain cave, it's beyond, it's before, right? Like you feel the inertia of what you're doing and you lose yourself in it. And so my treadmill at home had a Magnavox TV. I don't know if anyone has a Magnavox TV anymore. And so in order to find that sweet spot, I would try to stare at something on the wall. It happened to me, that Magnavox logo, but that word's too long. Yeah. So I just picked the last part of it, which was Vox, and just lose myself in the run through staring at that. Yeah. And then I shared that with a couple of the running folks, and then we was hey, well, we should have a running club anyways. And so we did. We had a really good run with that club, no pun intended, where we had sponsors. We had 6 or 8 sponsors. Cool. I would show up to local runs, and people would have our T-shirts on. Yeah, because there got to be 100 people in the club, and I was I don't know who these people are anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting, man.
But then it was time to create. I'd paid an agency to come in and help us come up with brilliant names. Scott, you've probably been this. I mean, with M&S Connection Landscaping, you know brilliant naming.
Yeah, man, that name. So yeah, if people have seen, if they watch the show, I try to have things from my career and path that are representative of me, and that these used to be our landscaping yard signs, right? And the name came actually from my dad, who me and my buddy Mikey were just putzing around in his yard, right? He paid us $10 to lay some mulch, Yeah. And he goes, "Man, you guys are a good working connection." And I was like, bingo.
There it is.
And Mike gave me some crap about wanting my initial first, so we ended up putting the M before the S for all kinds of reasons. But nonetheless, that's how we ran. But yeah, it's
Yeah, so we're gonna get the Vox story. So I also had a lawn care landscaping service. I did it with my buddy Kevin. Yeah. So we were K and K. So that way we didn't have to argue whose K was first.
Yeah. See,
because he'd be like, well, mine is Kevin. I'm like, oh, Chris is clearly. So we just solved the problem with K and K lawn care. Not a great name, but
I know. It was at least it told a story, right? But they love the slogan of M&S. It was keeping your yard green and clean. People really bought into that. They're like, I like these guys. So
that's good stuff.
But so you were talking about looking at Vox and your club.
Yep, got the marketing agency. We are spinning the company out. I'm literally to my last day. I have to file the paperwork on creating the new co. Yeah. And I'm going out for a run, and I start to go through all the terrible names they had. Something was an Olympic god name. Something was something no one ever heard of with a Z Z,
Yep.
right? And so I go for my run. I'm like thinking through these names. I'm like, I guess I have to have an answer. I just need to go find my Vox and then move on. And as I started, I was like, what if it was Vox Mobile? What if we, because Vox is Latin for voice, right? And,
Yeah.
And so we went and did research, and the URL was not available, but the guy was willing to take a check. So
Yeah. So you bought it? Yeah.
I bought it that morning. And,
Yeah.
And away we went. Yeah.
That's super cool, man. That's a great story. I kind of, like I said, I was kind of going through some old articles, man, when you were like in Smart Business and Cranes and stuff here in Cleveland, and I saw that story. The other thing that I saw in there that I thought was interesting was you talked about how you were growing Vox at the time, and you grew it through partnerships and strategic initiatives. Can you talk to that a little bit? Because it was just it was a big part of this article I read.
Yeah, it goes back to the cold start. If you're going to go build a business and it's just going to be you, and you're going to figure out how to like get your product someplace, you really want a channel. Right, yeah. Like somebody that's already gone there before. They're opening up. You can find your draft spot. Like you love racing, I love racing. You want to race behind people till you should be in front.
Right,
because
exactly.
being that lead spot's a hard spot.
Yeah,
right,
that's right.
So I think that was the same way in business for me, and from all the way back to my .com days. It's like go find somebody else that's doing it, convincing the market. Find your niche into it, right, and then go from there. And so for us, it was BlackBerry and the kind of the BlackBerry initiative. And what we did differently was we didn't want to be the person writing the application. There was thousands of those. We wanted to be the folks that actually understood technically all the infrastructure and the application layer, and then go help those large organizations deploy those assets and not just manage the human side of the interaction, but manage all the interactions in the chain and that value chain. And so that was the strategic nature of what we did, was just go find a great partner like BlackBerry and convince them that we were, a partner that they should bring leads and opportunities to, and leverage their sales force, and just kind of keep building from there.
Well, I think there's a common thread here, though. But whether it was the running club or that relationship with BlackBerry, there's a sense of relationships and community building. And as I've gotten to know you, too, you can sense that. And we're a lot like that here at EPI, right? We were about bringing people together in a community to advance something forward. I just think it's unique and something that I can certainly appreciate, right? It's cool to hear, you have this running club when you just go to a run or a marathon or whatever you're running, and there's like people with your club shirt on. I have today, some of the guys were walking around. I have this club. It's not a cool running club, right? But it was a thing birthed out of COVID where a bunch of guys in their 30s and 40s. We didn't get to see each other all that much because we're all locked inside. We have this group of like 5 guys that are pretty close, and like my friend group, and we like hanging out in the backyard amongst in the woods with a little fire, cooking good steaks, smoking good cigars, and drinking bourbon. So we started calling ourselves the Gentlemen of Cranage, and I live on Cranage Road, right? So we were the Gentlemen of Cranage, and when I would, we would come over there, and my wife would be like, "The boys are back over." I was like, "No, honey, this is the Gentlemen of Cranage." But now my brother-in-law is in this little group, and he brought, literally this week, he brought pullovers, like a nice pullover like yours, with the Gentlemen of Cranage. We got a logo and everything.
There you go.
And then we started actually doing like charitable work, so we'll be like do donations to stuff, and then we start like bringing in guests. And what it's become today, because we all have little kids, we all share like what it's like to be a dad. So it's not.
Yeah.
It ended up just like the guys getting together during COVID, so we had a very intentional moment to go see each other, and it's become actually like almost like a therapy group where the guys are all in their careers or growing businesses and with little kids that you can go into and talk. So it's been community building. It seems like a big deal for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because first off, EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, which I was in for 13 years, is exactly what you just described. It's a peer group. It's typically 6 to 10 individuals getting together on a monthly basis, commonality amongst age and stage of life, right, and interests they have, both social, political, otherwise.
Yeah.
So what you've done is just created a really strong peer group, right?
You did. It was.
And you don't. It
was an outlet.
Yeah, because there's EPO, there's YPO, there's YPO, EO, Vistage, Tiger 21. There's all these peer groups, right? But sometimes all you got to do is look around for your friends.
I know, exactly. And again, make an intentional moment. It's not just the guys getting together. It was like, hey man, we're going to get together and we're actually going to talk about fatherhood or something actually a little bit more sensitive than just the typical guy hangout. So when we were talking about Vox, I was like, I wonder if the Gentlemen of Cranage could be 100 strong one day, right?
I think you'd be surprised.
It's
You'd be
cool.
surprised how fast. Yeah. So we, on that community topic, I think there's a selflessness and there's a selfish moment also, right? So the selflessness is what drives you to create community. the selfish part for me is how much I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right. So as much as I do it for others, I do it because I also enjoy the community side of it. Right. I really find people fascinating. I love the stories that happen. And so we have a podcast that we've been sponsors and supports called Lay of the Land. So I think we're on episode 184 this last week.
Cool.
And so we've got a studio not as nice as yours. Yours is nicer than ours.
Oh,
I'll just give
thanks.
it up.
Well, you can thank Paige on the other side of the
done a
glass
great
for this
job.
great setup. Yeah.
So we're 184 episodes in, and then we do alumni events twice a year. The last one we did, we had 110 people out. We've got one coming up here in October. We just invite all the folks that have been on the podcast because they're all entrepreneurs or people supporting the entrepreneurial community in Northeast Ohio. And the amount of communing that happens when we get our alumni together has been fascinating to see.
Yeah.
And now we've just naturally started picking up sponsors, but we've also to the point where we've got just major like city entrepreneur business leaders like asking to be on.
Yeah, be on the show.
Be on the show.
Right.
And last night at the Best of Tech that the GCP put on, the podcast won an award for community impact.
Oh, congratulations, man. That's
so
awesome.
Jeffrey Stern, the host, got to get up on stage and take the award. And so we're just super proud that it's getting recognized for the community impact.
Community impact.
Because that's what it's meant to do, right? Like that's what we're out trying to do.
That's super cool. So let's go back to Vox real quick and kind of round this out. So you funded Vox Mobile with venture capital, or what was the structure? You talked about having to like fund it right away, right? You had 15 employees and it's time.
Well, it gets worse than that. You have to go to friends and family first.
Okay.
Right? Like my in-laws.
Really?
Oh yeah. No, I got them to write a check, right? Well, because you're out of the gates, you're trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And you're like trying to come up with, and I didn't have, I'd had soft exits before, so I didn't have enough capital. I mean, I still had, 650, probably 250 of my own, which is still a good amount.
Yeah,
but that's everything we had. Like everything we
Yeah,
had.
yeah.
That was mortgage.
Yeah.
That was credit cards. That was like, and so you needed additional funds, right? So we went out and we started raising money, friends and family. We have a very strong local network of angels here. Okay. That was my first foray into that angel world here. That was in 2006. So we raised probably at $1.5 million in the angel round. Yeah. And that bought us a couple years, probably 3-4 years before we went to a Series A. Yeah. And we started raising again once we got through that whole 2007, 2008 timeframe.
Yeah, that had to be rough. Well, I was going to say, that's pretty courageous, man. You're like, hey, let's roll this out and start this business.
Yeah.
Basically during, like, you were, a year before the recession? Recession was, 07, 09 or something like that, right?
Yeah, for us, it really hit in August of 08.
August of 08. And so talk to me about that. How did that feel?
Worst month ever. So I had been fortunate enough, there was another mobile tech company that was also based in Ohio. We were probably almost the same size. We were pulling these two companies together, had a VC out of New York that was going to fund the whole thing. And we would have by far been the dominant player, just pulling the two top players together. Yeah, we were on. Like we had got all the sign off. We were ready to go, and then the market started to just crash. And so I was literally at my aunt's funeral in August 08. I get the call. I look at it. I know it's the VC out of New York. I pick it up. And he's like, Kris, we can't. He's like, we're pulling back everything. The world's a wreck. Man. It's a scramble. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I've done all the work. All the diligence is done.
Yeah, and you're only like 4 years into this.
All the shareholders are ready to go. Like, we've worked 6 months on this deal, and they kill it. The VC pulled the funding because they were just in a bad spot themselves. And so that was a bad moment. And then, like, literally the next day, I get a call from the bank. And we probably had like a $350,000 line. Yeah, we were using it, but mostly it was just a float between because we had large enterprise clients that don't like to pay you on time. That's one of the things that they don't like to do. Yeah. But they swept all of our cash. Right. They called the note, and you're like, this guy's the banker. His name's Dell, and I was like, Dell, we didn't do anything wrong. And he's like, Kris, it's not about what you've done. It's about what the market's doing. Yeah. So you no longer have any money.
Oh no! Yeah, so the VC guy's out, the bank is out,
the bank's out.
So what do you do?
Oh, it gets worse. So we have back in our BlackBerry days, like we got asked by BlackBerry to write this application layer for the highly confidential. And so what it did was we took an encrypted like T-Mobile device that was data only. And we built servers in multiple locations, and it would wipe this series of BlackBerries every hour on the hour. And everything was encrypted. So like allegedly Tom Cruise had 100 of our devices out there, and Tom didn't want anybody to know. We had senators, we had like all kinds of folks. But apparently, the drug traffickers figured out the device worked really well for them. And we weren't the distributors or sellers of these devices. We just operated all the infrastructure.
Right.
And it was by far our largest client. It was growing really fast, right? But we didn't know who they were because they would get signed up and it was all an encrypted number that, ID that we were given. So we really didn't know who the end users were when we shipped the devices to the distributors we sold them to. So anyways, we got to see the CEO of that company in handcuffs. It was Operation Candy Store on Fox. And he was being cuffed and taken off to jail. And I'm like, this is probably bad. This probably
I thought it couldn't get any worse.
I think it could get worse, right? Like, I think him in handcuffs. And of course, the next call I got was the DA looking to see what we knew about their operation. So that was 3 for 3.
That's scary too, man. Yeah. Like that's like you get the DEA calling you, and you're like, dude.
Yeah,
what did I get myself into?
Right. Well, what's funny, and this is not a brag moment, but like the DEA came out and they said that they actually caught them on our devices, but it turned out there was nothing because when the DEA got into the infrastructure, it wipes itself every hour. Right. So there was literally nothing you could find on the devices. Right. They did not crack our devices. What they did was when you have a phone that's tapped. Yeah. You pick it up and I hit send, and before you pick up, if I start talking, they actually get to hear everything you're saying on the wiretap before you pick up. I didn't know any of this before this case.
Yeah, wow, interesting. That's wild. Wow.
So that August was bad. Largest customer goes down, bank line gets swept, acquisition merger falls through, and we had to go figure out how to get from here to there.
And so how'd you do this? Like how do you lead at that point, right? Because you have employees looking to you as their leader, like, dude, what are we going to do?
Transparency, right? You got no story but the real story. Any other story you try to shape or shift around for your team, they're going to know, right? Yeah. So you, with humility and vulnerability, you just got to come back at it and say, this is the moment we're in. Yeah. Right. I can't change this, but we can figure out is how to get from here to there. And I had to go back to those investors that I just told that we're going to have a windfall of cash coming in. Right. I had to go back to them and say, remember that windfall of cash? You don't have that anymore, and I actually need money.
Oh yeah, it's the opposite. It's the opposite of what I was originally telling you.
And you got to remember that in 2008, it's like now September-ish, they're all like they don't know what they're doing. Like their own money is especially in the public markets was just all over the place.
Yeah. So you go on, but you do swing out of that and make a pretty like one of the questions I wanted to talk to you about because I feel we live in it here at EPI. It's kind of a fascinating world. Is this hyper growth, right? This 40% or more growth because. You grew the hell out of that company, though, correct? Because it was like a 12-year run?
Yeah. We had some just moments where we figured things out. Like one of those moments was one of our largest customers, because think about, we're into the enterprise space. Like, so we have some massive customers like Halliburton, right? Yeah. And so we had a customer that was actually out of the Pittsburgh area, and they're multinational. They had like 30 locations internationally. And that we were doing a great job of servicing their BlackBerry infrastructure in the United States and Canada, but nowhere else. So they called us in and sat us down, and I noticed like, man, there's a lot of people in this room today. And they start the meeting off, and they're like, hey, we have our international IT. Everyone's in today, so we wanted to bring you in. And I'm the CEO of the company, and I got my account manager with me. I'm looking at him going, did you not know this was going on? Yeah. And they go country by country and how we don't support them, right? And I'm like, of course we know. We never said we could. Like, I can't do that in the UK. I can't do that in Dubai. I can't. I don't have any way to do that. And so they very confidently said, so we're firing you today. You have 90 days to figure out how you're going to handle all these other locations, or at least 60 to 80% of the volume in all these locations, or our contract is terminated. And the company was Kennametal, for anybody who knows. So we were like, holy cow, that's terrible. Like this is our largest customer. Like this takes a hit. And so I went back, gathered the team in a room, and I'm like, look, this is just an opportunity. I know it sounds like it's not an opportunity. Yeah, it's just an opportunity. So we're going to stay in this room. We're going to figure out how do we actually do what they're asking us to do, which is basically have global distribution when we're a company of 130 people or something, right? Like, wild. And so we came up with the analogy, because the belief is that it's all been done before. You and I, if we sit down to invent something, we're not. We're just rehashing something someone else has done. Let's just admit it, right? Yeah. And so we came up with the airline industry analogy and the Star Alliance. So if you buy a ticket on United today and you want to get to Germany, you're not going to ride a United plane the whole way there. Right. You will switch out maybe in Heathrow, right? And you're going to switch over to another airline, and they're going to take you the rest of the way. But your relationship is with United, right, through the Star Alliance. Yeah. So My idea was I'll go build a global joint venture with all the distribution points, and we called it GEMA, the Global Enterprise Mobility Alliance. Right?
Yes.
And I literally went to BlackBerry and said, give me your strongest partners in all these markets I have to stand up and go serve.
Yeah.
Then I jumped on a plane and I flew to all these countries and I met with those partners and I convinced them to put in money, capital, so that we could go build a global joint venture that would do delivery to all these different countries. And we did that.
Yeah.
And that got me AT&T, started getting us large accounts because nobody else was figuring out how to do it that way.
That's smart.
And
idea,
the global joint venture still exists today and it's doing really well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, and what a great idea. To your point, playing off something that clearly had been working. You're like, why can't we do that in our space and invent that?
Yeah, this is really how naive of an entrepreneur I am, because I went home and told my wife, I'm like, how hard could this be? I'm just going to get on a plane. I'm going to go to Dubai, and then I'm going to go to Germany, and then I'm going to fly to China, and then
and I'm going to gather these people and organizations together
through all these different, their own cultures, and I'm going to convince them to write checks so we can go build this thing.
Yeah.
It can't be that hard.
Yeah, well, that was a pretty innovative idea, man. I mean, I think that also speaks volumes to you and your team too. I mean, I think that's just, to your point, borrowing kind of an idea and then amplifying it into and optimizing it into your space. That's a unique thing, man. That's super cool. And how many people were in that? That grew or organizations were in there, over 100, right?
Yeah. So we started off with 8 kind of owning partners in that joint venture, and then we just kept pulling in more suppliers, and then obviously customers help feed that whole motion. But that was, to your point, is like you have to, in order to have kind of that ongoing accelerant growth. I mean, you might get lucky and find the one thing that you get to do.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's a step function of growth, right? Something you do gets me to here, and I have to step it again to get to the next place.
Yeah.
And so typically it's just a new set of problems to solve.
Yeah.
Right? So how do I identify what's working, what's not working, and just go figure those things out?
All right, well, I got to take a quick break. So I want to talk to you about how then you've exited Vox and what you're doing today. So we'll get there next. So stick with us. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Hey there, business owners. Are you ready for a game-changing opportunity? Introducing the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking research has reshaped how we view business ownership and exit planning. This report isn't just another study, it's a deep dive into the evolution of business ownership. It shines a spotlight on the crucial intersection of business attractiveness and owner readiness, revealing the undeniable impact of preparation on achieving successful transitions. With younger generations taking the reins, exit planning is taking on a whole new perspective. Education and awareness about preparing for the future have never been more crucial, and with financial readiness leading the charge, there's a clear opportunity for growth and learning. But here's the kicker. The report shows a surge in exit planning education and understanding, yet many still lack formal transition teams, highlighting the essential role of comprehensive support. So who's got your back? Trusted advisors have evolved from CPAs to financial advisors, making a decade of significant change in support networks. Ready to take the next step towards a successful exit? Dive into the Exit Planning Institute's 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report and start shaping your legacy today. The future is knocking. Are you ready to answer? Discover your readiness level at 2023ownerreadiness.com and take the first step towards a successful and significant exit.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snyder's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snyder presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snyder's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out with Kris and talking about the Vox Mobile days. So now you've made this 12-year run, hyper growth. You've gone from 15 when you rolled it out to 100 plus people. And how did you exit? Talk to me about that.
Well, I think it's one of you guys get to have this conversation, right? As you're advising people on exit all the time. I didn't have that level of intelligence put into mine, right? Wasn't figuring out. I wasn't like all the way out here working my way back.
Yeah.
It was trying to figure out what I felt passionate about, what I was doing. And so we had 3 rounds of funding in the company that time. We were growing about 15% year over year. We really wanted to be 30%. And I had an opportunity to go on vacation with my wife, came back, had some moments of clarity. And my clarity was I wanted to pivot the company to go focus on security. So go back in some time frames, BlackBerry fell from grace. They refound their footing on security. We were watching these other kind of MSPs, managed service providers that were focusing more on the security side. We had all the assets for it, but we weren't focused on it.
Yeah.
We were really much more on the application layer and the hardware layer. So invigorated, pitched it to my board. Wasn't contentious. They basically just said, look, we're doing really well. This is our path. We just need to execute more. We don't need to pivot or build. And then that was one of those moments of like, why does that upset me? It's because I'm not an executor. I'm a builder.
Yeah.
Like I need to go feel that build. And if we just need someone to be sitting in the CEO seat who's going to execute this couple 100-person business forward, then we should go find somebody else to do that.
Yeah.
Right. My value creation is not there. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was really kind of that moment of looking yourself in the mirror and going, I think that my exit is now, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm not ready for it, but it's now. And so started having the conversation with the board, call that Q4, went into Q1, started like, we all got aligned and agreed around it. And then it's just like, okay, who do we need to replace, backfill, and start that motion. So exited beginning of March. So it was within a 4 or 5 month time frame of coming to that realization that it was time to go. And just go figure out what's next.
So what was next for you then? So because before you were into 90, you were doing some other stuff as well.
Yeah. So I didn't make this point. I want to step back because it's probably some of the best mentorship I got. So Bob Lasser, who's just been a great mentor of mine. So he did MRI, which is probably one of the largest local software companies, and he sold MRI at one point to Intuit before it got bought back out. But he said this to me. He's like, look, your exit is always now. Like if you're doing VC funding, they will typically, depend upon the stage of the business and the place, they will let you actually take money out at each one of those raises, depending upon where the business is at, right?
Yeah, sure.
So as an owner in that moment, you can actually say, I'm de-risking my overall portfolio because if 90% of my wealth is locked up inside the business, and I have these different tranches, the Series A, the Series B, Series C, whatever, I, as the business owner, especially the primary business owner, I can start to take some of the money at that different price point at the different levels. So
that's interesting.
So I got that advice. I had not done that in prior ones. It was kind of an all or nothing proposition. And so I was able to kind of start working along that way and say, okay, you can actually take some money out on these different.
Well, to your point, it's kind of what we teach too, as we remodeled the program in 2020 to take it online. We obviously looked at the curriculum and the way and what we believe and how the methodology had evolved since 2016 when Dan first wrote his book. And we started teaching hybrid exits. I think many owners today still think it's like a one bite of the apple, and it certainly doesn't have to be, right?
No.
And as you're building value in your company, by keeping all of your equity there, you're actually becoming more risky because it becomes a huger portion and the largest portion of your personal financial portfolio. So that is an interesting concept to say, look, you can take some chips off the table at each round, but in perhaps like a business like ours, you could sell some to the employees, and then you could sell some maybe to private equity, and then the private equity company might buy the whole thing out, or you bring in strategic partners, financial buyers. And I just think it's a concept that still many owners, I don't think, grasp.
They don't grasp it. And I think so here's one of the reasons that it really worked for me, and I'm grateful for the advice, was because so often you've got an entrepreneur, male, female, doesn't matter, and they've got a partner, they got a spouse on the other side. And we ask that partner, we ask that spouse to take a risk with us. And then we step off the ledge. And when we step off the ledge, they know we don't have a parachute. Right? I've got young kids at home at that time, and I don't have funding for college because I put everything I had into the business.
Correct.
Right? If I have to wait 12 years to get it out, my wife's going to wait 12 years worried about how I'm paying for college.
Exactly.
How are we paying for the house? Right? All that stuff. So I can't wait that long. So you start to do that hybrid exit so I can start to de-risk along the way. So now I've got college funded. Now I have a nest egg for retirement before that longer term exit is. And so much I think people get caught up in their head. They're like, well, if I exit some capital, that means I don't believe. No, it means you're not a fool. It
really is. It is true though.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that again, there are all those opportunities are out there for folks. They just need to get comfortable with how they think about exiting, not the entire thing along the way to your hybrid moment.
Well, I do, and I like the hybrid option for people in their 50s, 40s, 30s too, because to your point, it does give you options along the way to fund other things in your life. And so I actually think we'll probably see it more. I think the Gen X generation is I think more in tune to exit strategy than maybe the baby boomers have been, because I think the Gen Xers are looking for it's like they'll use maybe like a Gino Wickman EOS kind of term, right? Like time for other passions. There's multiple things that are going on in their life. And to your point, helping fund those things along the way is it's kind of a smart business practice. A lot different than our baby boomer counterparts that started and then held 40 years.
40 years, right?
Yeah,
and it's again, I think about how much support you need from home. And if they're worried, you're going to feel it, right? So finding paths to like de-risk some of that and get that settled a little bit stronger, I think it just gives you more energy and effort and a little bit more boldness too. Yeah, because you don't have to wait 40 years to get that
one huge bite of the apple, right? Yeah,
and you brag about it then. It's like, no, I don't think so.
So tell me about 90 and what you guys are doing today. Many of you would have interacted likely with 90 here in the EPI community, but tell me more about what you're doing today.
Yeah, so after I exited Vox, I did the whole like let's go get a great coach, and I was super lucky to find a guy's name's John Drury out of Florida. Yeah, he's done the YPO, the EO circuit for a long time, and he really helped me kind of build my impact filters, what we called it. Yeah, which was the kind of like what do you do next moment. Yeah, and I would have loved to have done that work ahead of time.
I was going to say right, and know what you know now, right?
Like that you should do, folks, if you're listening, like do that earlier than actually having the exit. But fortunate enough, could take the time. And then really got to this through just a friend who was running on EOS. He's like, hey, I don't know if you know about this EOS thing. I bought a company, would really like some help like implementing it. So I started looking into it. We'd run on Patrick Lencioni's Advantage at Vox, which is just another operating system. Right. And so it was the concepts were very familiar. So it was like, gosh, I think that's interesting work. Let me go see what that work feels like. And to be 100% transparent, I didn't think I would do it forever. I just thought I would get into it. It was going to be fun, go back to your community moment and talking to other business owners and leaders, and like that should be just really good work. And so I started doing that in kind of July of 18. Yep. And then just being kind of in the tech space, I was like, there has to be software for this, right? Like entrepreneurs, we got to do more with less forever. How do we do that? We go find technology, right? So went looking for it. There was two organizations that at that point were kind of EOS related software companies. Okay. Met with both of them. Mark Abbott, who's the founder of 90. I think there were 4 team members at 90 at that time. Yeah. And he was also an EOS implementer, and he was kind of putting together, for his practice, but also thinking longer term there should be software that does these things. Because we all love books and we read these great concepts like Walking to Destiny. Yeah, exactly. It's like, wow, look at this value acceleration methodology. How do I take that concept, right, bring that tool to life, which is software, and then I add the discipline layer, right, that relentlessness, right, to get us to where we need to be. And that's what really 90 does, right? It's a configurable operating system, so we could do EOS. We have a template for that. Yep. All right, we've got Pinnacle, we've got scaling up, right? So we've been building these templates. So, and ours isn't dogmatic. We're not trying to tell people which one's system is better than the other. We find systems work, great for
different
those
for people. Yeah.
Exactly, in different stages of the business they're at. And one of the reasons we were excited to start to get to know you guys is because obviously we've built a template now for the value acceleration methodology. Yeah. We think it works really well inside the software, and we're excited to take that inside to the community.
Yeah, so another operating system, right? Like the value operating system. So, and that's what I'm saying. To me, or that's I think what you're saying too is, there's books and there's like sheets of paper,
That's right.
And then you're kind of left with, this is all great. How do I start to actually power that and have it come alive and have it speak across an organization and have it like accessible at your fingertips?
Yeah, and the thing that I still do some US coaching work. 50 plus clients, 380 some sessions, somewhere in there. And the thing that that I've seen in that work, right? Like we can get the leadership team to buy in.
Yeah.
We can get the leadership team, even if they're in an orange binder, they can start to understand some of that. But now I want the entire company working as one. What am I going to do? Right. I'm going to pass out binders to everybody. I'm going to hold book reviews. Like I got to have a different way to get it to it and get it in front of them so they can start to really plan their work their plan, extend the vision out, all that fun stuff. Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Because again, you can enter it all in one source of truth. Right. So I think that it's wildly helpful from, if you have a large organization like 40, 50 people like EPI, having everything in one space where anybody can access it and understand where we're at any given time is beneficial across an entire organization, not just a leadership team.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a client that the CEO has been building just an incredible business. They're now approaching 200 people, and he took his first 2-week trip to Europe.
Yeah.
So they run on EOS powered by 90, and he's like, Kris, it was awesome. I could just look inside the software and I could see how all the teams are doing, all the meetings are happening, how they're rating them, the to-dos, the weekly scorecards, all that's just right there from Europe. It's like, yes.
So did Mark bring you into this business? Did he know you, or did you?
So I went out and found him, right? Because I was looking for the owners of these businesses. Again, they're small, and since he was an EOS implementer, and he and I met up, and I was a kindred spirit because he and I started talking. And the first thing we did was found a whiteboard, so we could just because what I loved about his approach was he cared so much about the product, whereas the other folks that I met always cared about sales. And it's like sales to me, if you have the right product, that's not a problem. Right, we'll figure out the sales if we have the right product. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm just convincing people to do something short term that's really not that important. Right, like of course, I don't want to sell, I want to serve, and that service too. So Mark and I met, and I became an investor and advisor in 2019, and then by the beginning of 20, he asked if I would start helping out on some of the channel stuff since I was already an EOS implementer. So started helping on channels, and then at one point during the pandemic. We were like, we have a fractional CFO, and it's just not working. Like he's not getting the stage we're at, what we're doing. So I was like, well, just give me 3 months. I'll clean up all the books, and then So I decided I'd be CFO for a little while. Okay. It was 3 years later before I got rid of that title.
Oh my gosh,
it was forever.
Yeah.
So be careful what you ask for, especially if you can do it. Then you're going to keep doing it.
You're really good at this, and you seem to like it. So let's just keep.
And we were trying to be so capital efficient, which I'm super proud of how capital efficient we were. But it was just the things that you look at and go, okay, well, I could do that in the evening. Let's just keep putting them the investable dollars where they need to be.
So the other thing, as I got to know you guys specifically through 90, is there's without doubt I've got to meet some of your team, and there's without doubt an ownership mindset, a part of that organization. Can you talk to that a little bit, and how you created that community of basically here we call it at EPI. I think I laughed with you that last time. I was trying to make a decision. I said, Pedro, what would you do here? And she's like, Scott, you're the entrepreneur. I'm the intrapreneur. And when we got to meet you guys feel that same way. There's a sense of ownership. In fact, I think there is ownership.
There's ownership
from some of your employees. Can you talk to that model?
So everybody has the opportunity to be an owner through an equity program. It's earned equity, but we've also opened it up multiple times if people want to buy equity. Okay. So we've done that. We've had plenty. I should probably know that number off the top of my head of folks that have bought equity at different moments, and sometimes it was. When I first bought in 2019, we had an early developer that ran into a tax problem, and he needed to sell some equity. So we still have had some of those things along the way. We do a valuation every quarter. We use Carta since we're a SaaS company, so they'll do a valuation every quarter. So we reset the value of the equity such that as we have new folks come in, they know what the equity is. And there's obviously discounts because we're not publicly traded and all that fun stuff that goes to it. But we're trying to get everyone to see the business that we're building and the acceleration of that value. So they're not just sitting here thinking about what's my paycheck today.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like we want you to understand the cap table. We want you to understand how this business creates value, right? So that you feel that.
Are you teaching them that along the way too? Like, you're not just saying, okay, cool, you're bought in, and you're teaching them what ownership means?
That's right, 100%. And we want all the leaders need to be able to hold those conversations, not just our CFO. Right. Totally. So part of being a leader in the company is not understand how value gets created, as well as being able to explain it to others. And it's one of those things that it's not an easy thing to do, especially because you have a lot of folks. who, when they start to think about a cap table, they start to think about how does the waterfall work inside, right? How's the money flow? If there's a sale, we want to be transparent with folks so that they can see that.
You could sense that from the team that you brought to the EPI headquarters, that they had that sense as well. There was much more to it than, hey, this is my job that I show up every day. And so, again, another interesting option, right, for owners that are exiting. We think a lot about ESOPs. We talk a lot about ESOPs in our EPI world today, but there are multiple forms of employee ownership along the way as well that help the owners take some perhaps chips off the table. But I have to ask this question too, as somebody that has grown we talked about hyper growth. The other thing that is on Team EPI's mind, I thought it'd be a cool question for you to maybe walk through in our closing kind of minutes here on the show is we talk a lot about that no man's land concept, right? And how I think it's somewhere between like walking through $5 million to up to a $30 million revenue mark. And you can feel that where you're too big to be small, but you're too small to be big. And that's where EPI is today. So as a guy that has grown and scaled companies and people, how many people do you have now at 90?
191.
Like 191, and it started with a handful.
Yeah.
What are some key points that selfishly I could take or our audience can take who are maybe joining me in no man's land? How do we get through?
So we think about, we've done a good amount of work on this at 90 through our clients, but really there's kind of 5 stages of business building, right? We call this the 5 stages of development. And we use Maslow's hierarchy of need was kind of our first go at this. And as you guys are familiar with Maslow's, at the bottom is survival, right? Like if I take away everything, if I take away your food, water, shelter, what are you going to think about?
Yeah.
I can't think about the next 10 years. I'm hungry. I don't have a place to sleep, right? And I need some water. So at some point, that's survival mode, right? And then as humans, we get to that next one. And for us in business, we think about it, the business becomes more sustainable. I'm not just thinking about payroll every day and do I have lost my largest customer, right? Like I can actually get to sustainability. And that's still, everyone's doing lots of things, right? I don't have the opportunity to specialize.
Yeah.
And then I get into this next one, which is really when I start to push into scale. And at scale, I start to feel that specialization. Here's where it breaks down. Because you actually have to have people let go, right? In the EOS world, we're going to call it delegate to elevate.
Yep.
I would also say you should first eliminate, automate, then delegate it.
Okay.
Right? That's a Tim Ferriss thing, but I think it's a good extension of the tool. Anyways, so as we start to look at that, you start to look for leaders that can actually do that work and then be able to delegate to others. And part of what's interesting in that step function is you don't realize how much of their identity is being really good at that function. Yeah. Right. Like maybe I'm the rightful leader of sales, but I really feel good about being the presenter and closer of all the big deals.
Yes.
I got to let that go, right? Because if that's my identity, then I've held too closely to that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to get to scale unless I help those other folks, that next generation, also be great at closing big deals. Because we need a lot of big deals in order for this thing to grow.
Totally.
So I think a lot of that comes down to the ability for scale is through the people, and as we think about their accountability chart, the seats they sit in, our abilities to then do what is next best to delegate, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do I actually get you to scale? There's those moments we have to figure that out. Assuming we can do the hiring of that well and the organizational structure well, I can push from scale really into success. Okay. And the difference in between that scale moment and success is the ability to survive without the founder. Right, and that's hard because the founder has to be the one that's let almost everything go. And I think you guys, you have a word for it.
Decentralized?
Decentralized, yeah, that's what you guys call it.
Yeah.
So it is truly that founder is where we could be okay if, we call it, one client, they call it the lion strategy because the founder went on safari and almost got eaten by a lion. And he was like, maybe what happened if I did get eaten by this lion? So it's like, I need a lion strategy to get me out of this dependency mode.
Right. Yeah.
So if we can help that, now you're really, depending upon what kind of company we're talking about, if it's a software company, you got to push at least into that to be in that 30 plus million of recurring revenue, which is where we're over that mark at this point.
Yeah.
And as much as we love our founder, Mark Abbott, if he didn't show up tomorrow, we've got a strong C-suite team. We know where we're going, the direction's set in place, and we can still execute.
Yeah, so that is, we might have to go off air so I could write all that down so we could start implementing that at EPI. And that's basically our strategy, right? We're trying to go from 40 to 90 employees over the next 4 years, and we're stuck in that. Stuck is not the word. We're walking through. We're navigating. And so I think it's been, for a guy, when I was thinking about what I could talk to you about, like that is fascinating to me because I'm wondering how many entrepreneurs or business owners are sitting out in listening to the show right now, saying, "Man, yeah, I'm walking through that now, and it's a little scary. Honestly, it's a little like, and especially it's scary for the founder owner to step back. So like we've decentralized Dad pretty well, but now we're decentralizing me. So I have a way deeper appreciation for what my dad has done over the last 4 years, which is let go." And kind of get that kind of buzz phrase of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It's pretty,
Right.
It's kind of a gnarly experience.
Yeah, and most of our business owners, when I've coached this, and I feel this is my own experiences, is because we start to actually create, let's hopefully good EBITDA, strong cash flow, and that part of that step function is you don't get to put that in your pocket.
Right.
I need that to come back into the business in order for us to get through that step function of growth. I have to make some bets. I have to make some investments, right?
Yeah.
And then when we've seen that, and I've coached that before, it's like, look, for all the right reasons, you've gotten used to like taking that EBITDA home.
Yeah.
All the right reasons. You deserve it, right?
Sure.
I'm not saying you don't. But
true.
if you actually want to go from here to here, we're going to go through a cycle. Maybe it's 12 months. Maybe it's 18 months where that doesn't happen.
Right.
And you have to be financially planned, which is why all the
a
stuff
good
you guys
point,
work
too.
on is great,
Yeah.
that you can see that value creation that will come from that investment,
Yeah,
right?
that
And
is true.
it should have a greater return than sitting in a 401k or wherever
One would assume,
put it,
right?
right.
One would assume. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, that's good advice. Well, we are already at the top of the hour, my friend. So we're going to go catch a happy hour together.
That sounds
and,
amazing.
I really appreciate you coming in and sharing some of your wisdom with us. I do. I really appreciate that. So thank you for being on the show. And for our audience, our next show is July 23rd. So subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. Thanks, Kris. We appreciate it. We'll see you around.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
We'll see you guys.